core versus casual. I mean, how do you think about the audience and demographics when you're thinking about business models?
I guess you can approach it in either of two ways. You either start with a business model and design a game for the business model, or you start with the game and fit the best business model around it. I think either is a valid approach to take, but I think you have to make a choice in terms of where you start with that. Obviously our experience is mainly on iPhone and iPad. If we look at probably the front runners in terms of the freemium model on iPhone, a company called NG Mocha, and some of the content they've been producing, the game mechanics have to fit that model. There has to be some sense of a depletable resource that you're buying into in a subscription fashion. If you don't have that, then it doesn't really work. If it's a linear game experience with an endpoint, it's very hard to fit that into a subscription model. So I think it can start in either place, but if you try and get the wrong manner of monetization into the wrong type of game, it could get very messy.
I think we were very aware when we come up with creative ideas that some of them definitely lend themselves to certain platforms better than others. So we're actively targeting the female audience with Facebook, and within PlayStation Home, it's still more male than female. I mean, I think it's a lot closer than it used to be, but it's still over 60% male, I think, on PlayStation Home. So the kind of games and the kind of projects we do in the two platforms definitely have to be different, and it's really, really worth developers making sure they really understand and get as many statistics and information on the demographics of each of the platforms, because they are very different. And I don't know enough about the iPad and iPhone, and that's something we're going to be trying to find a lot more out about.
I think within the console space on PlayStation Network and on XBLA, the audience is pretty well defined. I think that's pretty well understood, and we certainly feel we've been playing to our strengths of years of making games for other people for those platforms. And actually, the business model evolution within those is very nuanced. You're only talking about very detailed changes within a very well understood space. So I think for us, the game design process is pretty conventional. It's more about the very minor changes you can make in a digital platform compared to, say, a retail product.
And are those changes more the things which improve the marketing, more that things improve the monetization? I mean, what's the real kind of basically so the rest of the audience can go away going, Ian said I should do this?
Well, I think the first thing to say is if you're traditionally making games for other people and then you come at it and say I'm going to make my own game, self-publish on any space, you really need to change your mindset to be one of a publisher. And that is a very different mindset. You have to think completely differently about the fact that in the end the IP is everything, and everything else has to follow from developing that IP, building it and monetizing it in the end. So, but actually within the fairly limited freedom you have on PlayStation Network and Xbox Live compared to completely unmanaged portfolios, then I think we are trying to mostly focus on marketing, because actually the difficult thing is still reaching your audience or reaching an audience compared to those big people that you're competing with, the likes of EA and so on, who are able to put huge amounts of marketing behind their products, and they often have very well-known IPs. So for us, we assume, perhaps naively, that money will follow if we can successfully get an audience and we can get people to download the game. So it's about marketing mostly at the moment.
Okay. Since the audience haven't asked questions yet, I might go for an alternative way of audience participation. So when I'm thinking about business models, I generally think there are 8 different ways of making money from a game. I didn't write them down in advance, so I better hope I remember them. I know from tests I've done, my short-term memory has 7 items in it, so I'm in trouble with 8. So maybe you can stick your hand up in the audience if you've ever paid for a game, if you bought one in a shop. Okay, that's the easy one. We think that's 100%. That's good. How about if you've ever subscribed to a game, Warcraft or anything similar to that? What do we reckon, about half?
40%?
40%. Played a game that's fully branded, paid for by a sponsor or an advertiser. Blitz made a Burger King game. We've seen Buckley Card's iPhone, Waterslide Extreme kind of thing. So as I'm describing them, more people's hands are going up. So I think that's one thing that's really interesting, is sometimes people don't realise where the money is coming behind these free games. To address the chap earlier who said, how can you make money from a free game? I totally failed to decide how many there were there. Was that more or less than the last one?
35, I'm checking more.
I thought it was more. I thought it was more as well. So we're going for 50% on that one. Played a game with ads in or around it. I think that should be pretty high, kind of. If you've ever played any kind of casual game or any game on Facebook, you've kind of done that. So that's pretty close to 100%. Moving into the area where AAA developers are loath to admit they've done this, paid for a virtual good of any sort, bought something in Farmville, sent a flirting product to a friend digitally. That counts. That counts. We're a bit old for that in this audience. The TV audience I asked this to all, they admitted more when I said that one. I didn't, again, it's really bright lights in my eyes. 30%, I mean...
It was a bit less, I thought.
It was
25.
even lower than 30.
20.
So kind
You
of
have
20.
to bump that one up for the embarrassment factor, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, here's the sort of wrinkle on that one. Filled in an offer in order not to have to pay but still get stuff. So signed up to Love Film in order to get free points in Farmville or answered a survey. So far I'm seeing 2 people in the audience, 3. So that's maybe, what, 2%?
Yeah, it's pretty low.
2%. So offers, which are 30% of Farmville's revenue, they were before the scandal broke. Obviously, we're not an audience for whom that was kind of key, which was offers. Premium services are relatively rare. We've seen, I think Jefferson talked about who's got the biggest brain earlier today. You can pay a £7 one-off in order to upgrade to the pro version. In fact, that's Spirit of Adventures model. I can say that now because we announced it, so we can talk about that. So that's kind of a free game you can play, or you can pay extra for extra features if you fancy. Anybody done that model? We've got 1. Oh, there's a few more at the back, so again, about another 2%. And as predicted, that means I got to 7, I can't remember the last one. The last one is skill-based games. Paid to play chess, backgammon, Counter-Strike, played on any of Quarry or Tournament.com to bet that you could beat your friends at a game. So slightly more there. I was expecting the AAA developer contingent to have a stronger sense of their own prowess at games than that. So kind of maybe 5%. So it's not surprising to me that we're talking about, we've all bought games, many of us have subscribed, and we've all seen ads, and that's, I think, where a lot of people start. But there are these many different ways, and there's a lot more complexity around that. NG Moko's making half of its money. It's now announced, it's gone completely free to play. It makes 8 cents per daily average user a day. 3 cents of that comes from the 2% of subscribers who buy virtual goods, and the rest are a combination of branded advertising, lead generation, and cost per install. Other apps paying NG Moko to get their apps kind of installed. So there's lots of ways of making money from free. I said I want to talk about free, so bring it back to the panel, as I said that I would. Clearly free isn't a business model. To my mind, it's a marketing technique, an incredibly powerful one. How important do you think free is going to be going forward? I mean, you've all got slightly different businesses, demographics, genres, and so on. How important do you think free is going to be to you and then to the broader games industry?
Well, I'd just like to sort of add a proviso on free as a business model.
I said it wasn't. It's a marketing technique.
Sorry, as a marketing technique. I'd say it's a very dangerous marketing technique. It needs to be handled very carefully. And we've had experience of this with Football Superstars. We've generated a